Okay, now that we know that our input is just an object and it has attributes, one of the attributes that it has is this value attribute. What is a value attribute? Well, it's the text that shows up when you type inside of the text box. That gets stored in its value attribute. And because it's an object, we can access attributes and we can change them. So I'm going to demonstrate that by coming back over to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to get rid of everything here. I'm I'm actually going to get rid of the script tag for now too. And I'm going to have an input of type text, and I'm going to give it an ID of input box. And I'm going to have another one, and I'm going to give this one the ID of output box. Okay, awesome. I have an input box and an output box. What I want to do is I want to take whatever they type in the input box, and as they type, I want to put it in the output box in uppercase. So in the input box, I'm going to wait for an event. What event am I waiting for? Well, I'm interacting with the user pushing buttons on the keyboard. So let's look at some of those buttons. So if I say on key, so it looks like there are three of them. There's on key down, on key press, and on key up. On key down works when the key goes down, but that means that the value won't yet have updated because it won't have fully read the key. It just knows that a key is going down. What we want is on key up. When they lift their finger off of the key, we want to execute a function. And the function we're going to execute is called transfer text. So when they type in the first box, every time they lift their finger off of a key, we want to transfer text. So let's create our script tag and let's create our function. So I'm going to say transfer text equals, okay. And we want to transfer text from the first box into the second box. Well, how do we do that? Well, first, we would need to grab this input box. So how do we do that? Well, we need to use the DOM. How do you use the DOM? By using the keyword document. So we're going to say document.getElementById. by ID. So now we're looking through our HTML page for an object. And we know that the object has an ID, and we know that ID is input box. So we're saying look through the entire object for an ID of input box. That will return us this input tag. This input tag is an object. If it's an object, it has attributes. How do you access attributes of objects? Well, you use the dot notation. So I'm going to say dot value. So what I've done is I've said go out to the document, look through it for an object, or in other words, a piece of HTML that has an ID of input box, and then grab the value. So right now I'm not doing anything with it. If I want to use that value, I have to store it. So I'm going to say let input val equal that. So I'm saying create a new variable. Inside of that variable, I want you to go grab the input box object and look for its value, take that value and store it in input value. And that is how you read an attribute out of the HTML page. You access it using the DOM, and then you access the name of that object's attribute. In this case, the value. You can also set those, similar to how you would change, if you had an object, you could change its name attribute. We've got an object that has a value attribute, and we can change that as well. So what we want to do is we want to change the value inside of this input. So what we want to do is we want to say our output box. So we'll say document.getElementById. What ID are we looking for? Well, this time we're looking for the output box. And then what do we want to do? Well, we want to access its value. This time, instead of reading the value, we're going to set the value. So we'll say set its value equal to the input value dot to uppercase. So we're saying take the input value, convert it to uppercase, and store it in the output box. When do we want this to run? Every time the key comes up in the input box. So I'm going to save this, and I come to my website. And I'm going to type, my name is Toa. And you can see it took all of my keys, and every time I lifted my finger off the keyboard, it converted this entire thing to uppercase and put it here.